Accusations are flying as Russia's war in Ukraine rages on. Beijing voices its own take on who is to blame. Washington issues a serious warning to China, addressing Chinese companies that might help Russia go around American sanctions. How are Western sanctions on Russia impacting China? And what would a China-Russia alliance mean to the Indo-Pacific region? Intelligence heads from the US and Australia explain. Are US companies in China happy where they are? Or are they looking for a new home base? A new survey gives some insight. And for those watching our full episode, Chinese state-backed hackers have compromised several US government networks. A new report explains how it happened and what information is at stake. Outside cyberspace, Beijing's infiltration is also expanding physically through China's Belt and Road Initiative. And what was China like before the Communist Party took power? Crowds of British theatergoers got a glimpse into just that. Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Before we start, a quick thank you to today's sponsor, Shenyuan Performing Arts. Have you ever wondered what China was like before the Communist Party took over in 1949? This show depicts just that. Shenyuan showcases China's rich cultural heritage and what the regime destroyed, which is why the performance is banned in China. Captivating and uplifting, Shenyuan brings to life the legendary heroes of old, portraying the spirituality and deep wisdom present in ancient Chinese tradition. Get your tickets today at shenyuan.show/ChinaInFocus. Enter the code CNInFocus with no spaces to waive ticket fees. For almost 2 weeks, Russian troops and vehicles have been marching on Ukrainian soil, and accusations are flying over what drove the conflict into war. The Chinese Communist regime is blaming NATO and the US for pushing tensions between Russia and Ukraine to a, quote, breaking point. China's foreign ministry spokesman made the remark Wednesday. The U.S. has urged Beijing to condemn Russia's invasion, but China's spokesman described it differently, saying the U.S. has been criticizing China's stance on Ukraine and, quote, discrediting China with lies. The trade volume between China and Russia reached nearly $150 billion last year, so any sanctions on Russia could damage China too. But on the other hand, Russia could be forced to up its trade with China to cope with the Western sanctions, something that would benefit China in areas like energy and agriculture. Over 1 million Ukrainians have fled their homes, while some trapped in the war-torn country are running out of food and drinking water. China has failed to condemn Russia's invasion, but is also sending aid to Ukraine. The Chinese Red Cross will send aid worth almost $800,000. The U.S. has already sent over $300 million worth of military assistance to Ukraine, and the White House is asking Congress for more. It plans to send in $10 billion worth of humanitarian aid. In comparison, Taiwan has sent 27 tons of medical supplies. And the island's president, Tsai Ing-wen, also donated 1 month of her salary, about $17,000. Taiwan's other top leaders did the same. The U.S. is warning Chinese companies to not help Russia evade U.S. sanctions. Otherwise, serious repercussions could follow. Some of them could even be shut down by American sanctions. Washington and the West have launched sweeping sanctions against Russia. And one of the moves is export control, banning the sales of cutting-edge semiconductors to Russia. Semiconductors, commonly known as microchips, are the brains of modern electronics. They run everything from iPhones to cars and fighter jets. Without them, our modern life would not be possible. In an interview with the New York Times, U.S. Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo said Russia is certainly going to be courting other countries to do an end run around our sanctions and export controls. Raimondo added if the U.S. finds out a Chinese company like SMIC sells its microchips to Russia, then the U.S. could essentially shut down the company to prevent them from using U.S. equipment and software. She points out it would be devastating to China's ability to produce these chips. The U.S. holds the upper hand in the semiconductor supply chain. And even though much of the manufacturing has shifted to Asia, countries there still rely on American software and equipment to produce the microchips. Washington slapped similar sanctions on Chinese telecom giant Huawei in 2020, choking its access to chips made with American technology. The move crippled Huawei's smartphone business. Leadership within the Chinese Communist Party is unsettled by the U.S. and its allies' strong response to Russia's war on Ukraine. This, according to CIA Director William Burns. He made the comment during the House Intelligence Committee's annual hearing on threat assessment on Tuesday.
CIA Director William Burns says the West's swift response to Russia will have other effects and will influence Beijing's decision-making on a potential invasion of Taiwan.
I would not underestimate President Xi and the Chinese leadership's determination with regard to Taiwan. I do think, as Director Haynes said earlier, they've been surprised and unsettled to some extent by what they've seen in Ukraine over the last 12 days.
Burns said that the Chinese Communist Party, or CCP, is also unsettled by how Russia's invasion
has driven Europeans and Americans much closer together. And so I think that's unsettling for them as well.
At the same time on Tuesday, National Intelligence Director Avril Haines said Beijing will continue its attempts to coerce Taiwan into unification with mainland China.
President Xi Jinping and China's other leaders are determined to force unification with Taiwan on Beijing's terms. China would prefer coerced unification that avoids armed conflict, and it has been stepping up diplomatic, economic, military pressure on the island for years to isolate it and weaken confidence in its democratically elected leaders. And at the same time, Beijing is preparing to use military force if it decides this is necessary.
Though the Taiwan issue is far from the only flashpoint in China-U.S. relations, the annual threat assessment put out by the National Intelligence Director's Office highlights that the CCP was already rapidly expanding its space, cyber, nuclear, economic, and diplomatic efforts, and on top of that, was seeking to further expand its military footprint through new bases on foreign soil.
What's more, Australia's intelligence chief said Wednesday that the risk of a major power conflict had grown since Russia invaded Ukraine.
We see a troubling new strategic convergence between Beijing and Moscow. We're going to have to work much harder to maintain the liberal quality of the rules-based order in Europe and here in the Indo-Pacific region.
Shearer said the geopolitical threat would center around technology, including the use of cyber attacks. Despite political tensions between the U.S. and China, more than 80% of American companies in China say they don't want to leave. That's according to a new survey from the American Chamber of Commerce in China. Is this really the case? And if so, why? NTD's Don Ma has more.
Does the survey present an accurate picture of what we see on the ground in China? Attorney Dan Harris, who represents business clients in China, says it does.
This is 100% of what we see, and it's what we've been seeing for probably 3 years.
The companies don't want to leave China despite a slew of concerns.
I think there is, globally, there's a caution right now for a number of reasons, one of which is the continuation of the COVID crisis.
James Nolt, an expert on political economy, says the companies aren't leaving because of profit.
It's a huge market, so they have no reason to leave as long as they're profiting and operating successfully in the country.
If you're an American company and you're buying product from China and it's getting delivered, you can read about all the news, you can listen to all the people who say it's just going to get worse. But as long as it's working for you and that is not one of the fires you need to put out, you're not going to do much.
Harris adds that for some companies, even if they want to leave, they usually don't because it costs too much.
Moving out of China and moving somewhere else is not easy, and it's not fast, and it's not cheap.
Even though it seems the majority of companies surveyed don't intend to leave China, they're not making major investments inside China either. This could be because companies are worried about the potential risks, which could be significant.
This is the kind of advice we give our clients. Figure out how to best minimize their footprint and to be in a position where when things get really bad, your losses are less. I think what's happened in Russia is incredibly instructive.
More than a third of those surveyed said they would actually reduce investment in China due to an uncertain policy environment in the country. Don Ma, NTD News.
General Motors is set to expand its business in China. The company is preparing to build a new brand there. It plans to market vehicles dubbed Halo cars by GM's China chief, Julian Blissett. He describes them as premium, often high-performance cars with an edgy design. Those cars will be sent to China from the U.S. According to a statement, GM is also inviting talent from across the industry to join the project. Blissett said last Friday that the new business will sell high-end GM vehicles that are currently unavailable in China through its existing brands. GM's current brands operating in China include Chevrolet, Buick, and Cadillac. All of them are owned and operated with Chinese joint venture partners. It's the result of a long-term policy from Beijing that all foreign companies must have one or more Chinese partners if they want to enter the Chinese market. Under that policy, there have been complaints from foreign companies saying their Chinese partners stole advanced technology while working together. But Blissett highlighted that GM will fully own the new business, independent from any Chinese partners. Detailed plans for the venture will be announced later. And that's all for today's China in Focus on YouTube. We are now sharing a shortened version of our program on YouTube. That's after being demonetized for a year. Full episodes can be watched on our partner platform, Epoch TV. To sign up for a 14-day free trial, please click the link down below. Thanks for watching China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer, and see you tomorrow.
Just so inspiring. It makes me want to go dance.
Breathtaking. I was very impressed.
I'm taking my program and I'm going to mention it on the news because I think it's a great performance and people should see it.
What I loved about the show was the authenticity of it. It was taking me on a journey.
Exceptional. The technique involved, that the thousands of hours of training.
People just float. Everything was exact, and then they worked to the exact moment, and it was beautiful.
You go away feeling with a smile in your heart from it.
Have to come. Life-changing.
Make sure you see it. Make sure you see it.
Don't wait. Get your tickets now.